Right, so we are currently at Revelations chapter 6. We've looked at the throne that appeared in chapters 4 and 5, which we know have to be before any of the seals are broken, because we see that the scroll is completely intact with all 7 seals. We've established that the amount of time within this last week that will be described is 2,520 days. And that is based off of the old Jewish calendar, which was a 30-day period per month, 12 months per year, rather than the Julianic calendar that we use. I believe it was the solar calendar versus the lunar calendar. I can't remember the exact names offhand. We looked at the halfway point, the abomination stands up from Daniel 9. That's pretty much as basically far as we've gotten. But we do have a time frame within which the next few events must occur. So we saw where the first seal was opened, the white horseman came out. The white horse came out. We saw that it symbolized the ability to conquer, but it was a peaceful conquering, as the Greek is very specific that it is a bow without arrows, rather than the actual weapon of bow with arrows, because a bow doesn't hurt, it's the arrows. And what that symbolized to the people that John was writing to. So, we are in verse 3 of chapter 6, which says, "And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, 'Come and see.'" This is very accurate. The only incorrect part is the living creature commands John to come. To point out that I know when we talk about the first seal, it says the 1 of 7. When you get here, it says the second, and they actually use the word for second, which is how we know the 1 of 7 was the first. Verse 4 says, "And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given unto him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth." Again, how we know that the first part was peace. "And that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword." There are a few inerrancies here. The most minor is that the horse is not red. Rather, it is pyros. It's a bright red fire, and the word power in no form is used. It's just, "and to the one sitting on it was granted to him to take the peace." And the word, so this shows us again that there is authority being passed on to someone. The word for peace is specifically peace of mind. So while we were united by the deceptions of the first horseman, here the unity and peace of mind is taken away with ferocity, because the word for to take is to take by force. The major problem I have with this verse is that the word is once again not earth, because it's not Gaia or Gaia, but rather it's Ges, which is a region or country. Now, that could be the entire region of the planet, but it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense there, because we will see later on that some places will side with Israel and some places will turn against Israel. So it can't affect the entire earth, otherwise everybody would be turning on one another. Everybody would no longer have peace of mind and be able to trust anyone. These places where the peace of mind is taken is so that there will be those who will turn against Israel in the church. And the sword mentioned here is the Machaira, which, if you'll remember, is a sword used specifically for exacting retribution. There are a couple of swords types used in the Bible. When we looked at the Word of God and how it's sharper than a two-edged sword, we talked about a few of those. So we see here that there's a peace of mind taken from the earth, and that he will exact a retribution, which if it's being used to exact retribution against Christians, as we'll see a little bit further down, it wouldn't make any sense for retribution to be from God against his own people. So that's another way to know that these horsemen, whatever their association is, they are going to be working for Satan. It is power that is being given to Satan, because he's the only one who would have retribution against Israel and the church. But it says they should kill one another. And we have a point of reference because of Daniel 9, that point where the peace is broken is at the halfway point. So because of Daniel 9, with Revelations 6:4, we know that the second seal will have to occur at that midpoint in Daniel 9 of the middle of the week, in literally the halfway point, when the abomination stands up, because before that it's peaceful. So for the peace to be taken, it has to line up with that occurrence. So we can place that one. Again, I'm not putting it on a timeline because we don't know where within time these 2,520 days will occur, but whenever it begins, halfway at that's where the second seal has to be, based on Daniel 9 and Revelation 6:4. It lines up too perfectly. And we'll go ahead and we'll see what the third seal does as well within this video. It says, "And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat upon him had a pair of balances in his hand." We reach the third seal, and again another living creature commands John to come. The horse this time, though, is the opposite of the white horse. This one is a word that is as black as ink. And the horseman is given specific instructions in the next verse, but here we see what authority is given to him. The word "a pair of balances" really kind of confused me, because I know what scales are. I know a pair of balances. I've played enough fantasy games to know what that is. But the word here was zygon, and a zygon is not a pair of balances, but rather it's a yoke or a heavy burden. Helps goes into the definition like this. It says it unites two elements to work as one unit, like when two pans operate together on a balance scale, or a pair of oxen pulling a single plow. So with the early translations of this word, it could definitely be understood that they would see it as a pair of balances, because that is what the word implies, operating like. But what it is it is something that will place a heavy burden upon mankind, and it is specifically to make different elements work as one unit. So in verse 6 he says, "And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, 'A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine.'" Now I find this voice very interesting, because the original description is something like a voice. Not "I heard a voice," but "I heard something like a voice." And that gives us a quality to the voice, distinguishing it from as being apart from the living creatures, the angels and men. So I decided I wanted to see what else could be gleaned from the first text, which were not a measure, but rather it's a chainix. And so I looked into a chainix, and we still have this measurement available. It's 1.92 pints. Okay, I'm going to probably nerd out just a little bit, because this gets into math again. Or just less than 1 quart. So 1.92 pints of wheat for a denarius, not a penny. In fact, a denarius is a lot more than a penny. It would have been about the same equivalency way back when this was translated, possibly, but definitely not nowadays. This is just so inaccurate nowadays. Depending upon the purity of the silver used, I looked up the quality of silver in a denarius, which would be anywhere back on November 3rd, 2018, could be as low as 30 cents, or as of November 2nd on 2018, it was $1.52. So the coins of Nero's time, when this was written, would have had a quality that is closer to that of the $1.52 value. So a 1.92 pints for $1.52. if we do straight conversion here. I went to a farming website to find out how much wheat was in a loaf of bread. And the farmer on that website said it's 550 grams. So I converted 550 dry grams over into dry quarts, and that gives us around 0.91 quarts, which you then can convert into dry pints, which is 1.92 or a Chainix. And that makes the math to figure out how much a loaf of wheat bread would cost very simple, because it's an exact 1-to-1 ratio, which would be $1.52 back on November 2nd of 2018. We then see that 3 Chainix of barley would cost the same amount, so barley bread would then roughly cost a third of the cost of wheat, which means around 50 cents. And the authority only extends so far as the voice-like words restricting the horsemen by not allowing to affect the olive oil, which was used for lamps and healing, and grape wine, which was specifically a medicinal wine. So to give a comparison to where we stand in terms of cost, a simple loaf of homemade flour bread right now costs about $1.58 to make. And while that sounds pretty good, let's factor in the cost of living, because that is something that many of us today in today's society forget about when we think about economic repercussions. While the denarius today would make that loaf of bread about $1.58 to make, $1.52, and we're at $1.58, which actually puts us above it, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you start thinking about this prediction. It kind of throws it off. You have to look at the cost of living back then to understand fully what's happening here. The denarius doesn't have much value today because of the price of silver, but back then it was a full day's wage. So the current minimum wage, until the new increase that was just voted in kicks in, when I was searching up these numbers, was $8.50. So a full day's wage would be around 8 hours currently. That's what we consider to be a full day's work. So that is $68 pre-tax. I started looking approximately how much would come out, which the calculators all came up to about $54 post-tax, depending on what was removed from your check. So that would be 3,400% increase in the cost of a loaf of bread. That's a huge increase. And that either shows that food will be scarce, or that the mentality of the Antichrist's rule will be something similar to either the communist viewpoint about working for your money and having just enough to be comfortable without the need of luxuries, or it could be very similar to the original anarchist movement, which did not deal so much in money for work, but commodities for your work. There's no telling which way it will be, but what we do know is that one day's wage will get you your food to survive. That's as much as you're going to get. Now, I personally believe that this burden, because understanding this is that the yoke is to unite forces to work together for a common cause, is how the Antichrist is going to be able to turn the world's mentality against the Christians and the Jews in the next seal, much the same way as our Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians currently use political problems to unite various groups of Americans against one another. But we'll see more about that as we look into how this third seal is going to tie into what occurs with the fourth seal.